because a lot of the times we don't see the fruits of our labor. And it can get kind of depressing when the very people we are trying to save usually have their lives ended. Or if they do live, we may not hear about what's happened to them. So I hope tonight you can leave feeling inspired that even if you touch one person's life, and we do, one at a time, just like my life was one at a time, it is absolutely worth it. Thank you. And I'm sure most of you know this, but in Canada, about 100,000 children lose their lives every year to abortion, somewhere around probably like 97,000. And of course, that's what's reported. I can't imagine what we don't know that goes unreported. In the United States, which is where I'm from actually Iowa in the States, which is kind of smack dab in the middle of nowhere, if you want to know. But in the US, over 1.3 million children's lives are ended by abortion each and every year. I am so disgusted that I have to say that to you. It breaks my heart. So that ends up in the United States being about 3,700 children a day. Since Roe versus Wade in the United States alone, nonetheless Canada and other parts of the world, we've lost 52 million children's lives to abortion. And here I stand before all of you tonight, meant to be, at least in the human sense of the word, one of those 52 million children. It is incredibly humbling. And for many, many years, I never felt like I had broad enough shoulders to carry this job. But I'll tell you, the Lord has done things in my life, and He has given me strengths and abilities that I never knew that I had within me, and He does that with us each and every day. It's not about having the ability, it's about being available. But what breaks my heart the most, I think, about those children lost to abortion is not just that we've lost tens of millions of children, but also that we have hundreds of millions of folks out there in our world, men, women, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, friends, communities that are all hurting because of abortion. And that's why I was standing there today with Silent No More, because I absolutely believe in what they're talking about. And if you could show a picture on the screen, I want to show you somebody's life who has been also affected by abortion. That is my daughter, Olivia. She's beautiful, isn't she? Yeah. And I'm a little biased because I'm her mom. So of course I think she's fantastic, but she is fantastic. And that breaks my heart, because if I wouldn't have survived that abortion attempt almost 33 years ago, that child that you just saw on the screen would have never had life. And we know that there are literally tens of millions of children like her. So not only are we fighting for the unborn, but we're fighting for future generations of the unborn. You know, there's no way my biological mother could have known when she entered a hospital in August of 1977 to end my life, that by aborting me, she would have wiped out her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, future generations from this world. And I know that my mother is not alone in that. But that's the reality of the world that we live in. And my family is truly the true face of what abortion looks like. You know, whenever somebody, and sometimes they think they're well-intentioned, say things to me like, you know, Melissa, don't you think your parents would have been better off if you would have just died? I'm a little biased since I was the one who was supposed to be killed, but no, I don't think their lives would have been better. You know, I hope and pray that my parents have had better lives knowing that their child lived. There's 52 million in the United States alone, other parents who don't have that ability. And so we need to share that message with other people. For those of you that don't know my story, I'm the survivor of actually what's called a saline infusion abortion. And I always have to kind of apologize before I explain the procedure to you, because it's not fun to hear about. But in the grand scheme of things, what I suffered pales in comparison to what we know children now do, because they've, of course, learned from survivors like me that they need to up the ante a little bit and make sure that children actually die in those abortions. But a saline infusion abortion involves injecting a caustic saline or salt solution into the amniotic fluid. And the intent of that salt solution is to scald the fetus to death from the outside in. And then numerous rounds of Pitocin are delivered to the mother to induce labor and ultimately dispel that dead body from the womb. When my mother entered a hospital for that procedure, she was 19 years old. She was an unmarried college student. And I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow when we get together, because I want to talk a little bit about college campuses and what it's like heading into it and what we know happens to college men and women. But my mother entered that hospital with the intent to take my life. And the procedure actually took place over 5 days. It typically only takes place over about 72 hours, but for some reason it lasted even longer. No one's ever been able to tell me why that is. And I've had the opportunity in my life to know some of the medical personnel that cared for me. But it lasting 2 extra days longer truly means that I was left in that salt solution for even longer than what I should have been. And I know you all are thinking the same thing everybody else does when they meet me. Is there something wrong with her that we can't see? Right? It's okay. You can own it. It's fine. People always ask that. But I am so blessed to stand here before all of you tonight and say, this is it. This is me in an entirety, in a whole. I have no health problems. My husband says, you have a bad back and asthma. Tell people that. Now you know I have a bad back and asthma. Don't y'all feel better knowing that? I'm healthier than most people in the world. And of course, people who are pro-choice and even some folks who are just atheist can't understand, well, there's no reason for her to have lived. How could she have lived? This woman's story can't be real. It is absolutely real, and it is absolutely true, and it is absolutely by the grace of God that I stand before all of you today to share his message and be healthy. If you ever want to look on my website, and it's just melissaohden.com. I think it's on the photos page. There's actually a copy of some of my birth records, and it includes some of the documentation about the saline infusion abortion. But that procedure took place over 5 days, and when I was delivered in bed by a nurse that 5th day, they left me for dead. And they actually left me on the bedside. They were tending to my mother, like they were told to do. But by the grace of God again, as they tended to my mother, he gave me the ability to make some small movements and grunting noises. And those doctors and nurses truly did something that they didn't have to do, as sad as that is. They stepped in and they gave me medical care that sustained my life. I've had, again, medical personnel, both doctors and nurses over the years, who have said, Melissa, we don't understand why they did that. You were a liability. Understood. But I can't help but believe that they knew that they were doing the right thing. And I'm so incredibly grateful to them. But how sad that we still live in a world where children are not provided medical care when they do live. I don't know if you all had seen the story, but recently a 22-week-old young man was aborted in Italy and survived. They left him for dead. And a priest ended up finding out about him while praying over his body. And it was about 10 hours later, I think, that they found him, and they put him in intensive care, but he later passed away because it had been too long. So it doesn't just happen to children like me 30-some years ago. It still happens in our world today. Even though I stand before you healthy, the doctors really had a poor prognosis for my life for about 5 years. They were afraid that I would not survive for very long. And if I did live, I would more than likely be disabled. I weighed a little less than 3 pounds when I was born. I had severe respiratory distress. I had jaundice. I was too weak to be able to suck from a bottle, and so they had to shave my head and feed me through an intravenous line. If you ever see pictures on my website, you'll see that my head was shaved. But I think the most important thing when I talk about what I was like as an infant and the poor prognosis for my life